Hi, welcome to Kids in the 90s. This is Jeremy again. This is our first podcast episode. I'm pretty excited. I've been thinking about it all day. I got a friend from work here with me. His name's Colton. Colton, how's it feel to be the first guest host of Kids in the 90s?
I'm just glad to finally be first to something in my life, honestly.
I guess if you've never had that happen before, this would, I guess, be a highlight. Sorry, you haven't had better luck in the past. I was born in 85, so as we do this podcast, my opinions and everything that I enjoy about the 90s was when I was 5 to 15. So, Colton, what year were you born in the 90s?
1994.
So 94, you can see he's going to have a 9-year gap between the two of us as far as our reflection on things and our perspective. So Colton, when I was talking to him about what he wanted to do for this podcast, I said, give me a topic. He threw out one that I didn't do much with, but I said we can make that work. So Colton said Gameboy Color. To fill you up to speed, I'm a Game Boy original classic person. You know, that big old taupe brick with the green screen with black numbers and dots on it, 2 pink buttons, a directional pad. It's as hefty as an OtterBox nowadays. You could drop that thing, kick it around, and it's going to look brand new, except for maybe a few scratches on the screen. And so the original Game Boy came out actually in 1989 in the summer in the North American region. But most of the games we play came out in the 90s. It was actually released in Europe in September 28th of 1990. So I'm going to allow it and say that the Game Boy Classic is a 90s item. Even though it was out for about 5 months prior, it's a 90s item for most folks. So that was the original. After that, you had Game Boy Pocket in 96. It was a little bit smaller and lighter. And then we get to some stuff that was released only in Japan. But we're going to keep it North American now. So Game Boy Color was released when, Colton?
That would be October 21st of 1998 is when you could get your first Game Boy Color here in the States.
And the Game Boy Color was a little bit smaller. The screen was slightly smaller as well, but it was in color. And I mean, if you think back about when your parents and stuff, not in the 90s, they had black and white TVs and they start seeing color. I mean, it was eye-opening, and that's kind of how it seems like it was for Colton. I was a poor kid, and we didn't. You couldn't just upgrade like you can nowadays when you make your own money. So I was stuck with the original. And the thing about Game Boy games back in the day was just like Nintendo games. The majority of them were like side-scrolling games, adventure games. I mean, you did have puzzlers like Tetris and stuff. Instead of Tetris, what I liked that actually came out in 90 was Dr. Mario. My grandma was a big Dr. Mario fan. I mean, you flip the pills, match up the different colors, they disappear. I mean, it's weird to say that kids are playing, pill games like this. We wonder where ecstasy and stuff came from nowadays. But that was a hot game in 1990. Did you ever play that, Colton?
Actually, I did. Not a whole lot. Don't have tons of memories of that one. But it was fun, and it's kind of like an early stages to Candy Crush, what we would have today.
Exactly. I didn't even think about Candy Crush, but it was like Pill Crush. Another game I remember that I played, I got one I played all the time, which we'll get to. I also played the Addams Family game based off the movie. It came out in 92. The funny thing for me was the start of it, you're Gomez jumping through like a cemetery, like in a forest with a bunch of headstones, and he's throwing knives. And the funny thing is, he's throwing them at bats and jumping on spiders, but he's throwing them at ghosts, and the ghosts they just die from the knives. I'm not sure why a ghost would, but that was kind of something funny that I remember about the Addams Family game. What's a game that you kind of played when you were younger, Colton, that stuck out in your mind?
So for me, it would be Bomberman from 1994 is when it was released for Game Boy, and you could play it on the Color. The Color was actually, you could cross-platform play and go back and play your older games. But Bomberman was it for me. I loved going around and blowing stuff up and making new paths and finding out what was in the rocks. And I mean, who doesn't like blowing stuff up?
I mean, I personally have not played much Bomberman. I do have a Game Boy lookalike case for my iPhone now that actually has a lot of old NES games, and Bomberman is one of them. So I have played it a little bit, but not on the sense of the Game Boy. It was not a game that stuck out to me. I do like that you were talking about cross-platforming, and we talk about nowadays with like PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, and are those cross-compatible, and will the PS5 be that way? And we talk about Xbox and stuff, and it's funny that now that you think about it, or think about how many games were on SNES, Sega, NES, and Game Boy. I mean, there were so many that were cross platforms that were ultimately the same game, just in a different format, whether it's 8-bit, 16-bit. What's another game that really stuck out to you as a kid?
Classic Super Mario Bros. The Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, I would say, would right up there with my number 2. It was a good one.
So it sounds like, I mean, you have kind of this kind of conventional take on the Game Boy with the games that you were playing that were kind of widely accepted by people. As you can tell from my list, it was a lot of like games. I was a big movie TV guy, so a lot of mine are based off TVs and games and stuff. So I'm going to have to throw out some other honorable mentions. Kirby's Dream Land, Mario with basically a balloon that sucked in things and spit it out to take out bad guys. You also had the Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, based on the animated series where Bullwinkle's moving throughout this rail station. He's jumping around. The funny thing is you got a moose that's really a heavy thing, and this moose not only jumps, but he actually glides. So I don't know if the game was using his antlers as like some kind of gliding mechanism, but I was thinking about that in addition to the weird... We all see it in TV and movies and games now, the subliminal messages that get put in there for kids. And I was watching a video to help remind myself of it a little bit, and there was this weird psychic that was throwing tarot cards out that you had to pick, kind of like when you jump in Super Mario Brothers 3 and try to get the star or matching, you know. And she was just throwing out tarot cards, and you were picking them. I mean, probably not the best thing for kids to be playing in the middle of an animated series game, but if you don't know that's happening nowadays, you are very naive and not paying attention to what's going on, because we know it's in just about every show. I mean, we hear about it on kid networks and stuff. But the number one game for me, I played this so much, it was like non-stop. Even when I beat it, I would just start it over and play again. And that was the Ren and Stimpy Show Vidiots game. Came out in 1993, and it was really only 3 levels to it. You had the house where Stimpy's jumping around, you're trying to dodge him, you're collecting cash, you're jumping onto clocks that project you forward, as well as moving, using the fans to fly around. Then you had the second level with Stimpy as a scientist, and then you would get to the third level where you have the military stage, and you're trying to get through that. You would think that it was a lot more, but remember, these games, you die after 3 lives or 4 lives, 5, you're done. It's no continue later, start back like any of the things we have nowadays. It's a straight, those were games were hardcore. You had to play well, or you're restarting, exactly. So, but what's funny was once you finish this, it would always say, congratulations, you have won log. If you don't know what that is, you need to go watch this Ren and Stimpy's show. Look up Log on YouTube. I mean, that just takes you back to them old Nickelodeon days, which I'm telling you, there will be some episodes on Nickelodeon 90s era goodness to come up. But so that's kind of, was there anything else? Did you play any of these other games I talked about, Colton, or anything that stuck out to you as far as other games that were maybe something that you really enjoyed and played a lot as a kid?
No, I played the Kirby, I played the Pokemon and stuff, but something that, you know, kind of like you mentioned in the first part of the podcast is our age gap. So with you would have had a chance to kind of have more say-so in the games you picked, And mine were always given to me from my parents. I wasn't able to go in and get my own game. So it would probably be my parents going in the store, having no clue what video game is popular or not popular, asking the person which one sells the most, and then that's the next game I got.
And didn't you have brothers or sisters or what, siblings?
Yeah, so I had an older sister, and she was not into Game Boy at all. So the Game Boy would have been just me.
Yeah, I had a younger sister. She was not really into Gameboyz as such, but she did play Sega and stuff like that with me as we got a little bit older. Not as competitive in it, but she did play that every now and then. So that's kind of the Game Boy for us. Like I said in the intro, there's going to be a lot of other episodes. There's a plethora of things we can talk about in the 90s, and I'm sure Colton will join us again. I mean, he hasn't been as excited as me today, but I've been waiting for this moment. So I'm glad that I could spend this time with you. A couple other things in the podcast that I do want to include are some kind of quirky things that I've come up with, little segments. One is 90s slang. So at the end, we're going to give you a little 90s slang to show out. And then I got another thing called a spoiler alert I want to share with you. It's going to be good. So let me go over those, then we'll get you set up for the next podcast coming up, hopefully soon. '90s slang right here. I'm going to have to take it here because I already gave you the dude in the other one. So, totally tubular, man. All right, it's time for a spoiler alert, and this is the number one thing I came up with whenever I wanted to do a podcast or get back on the radio was a spoiler alert. So basically, I'm gonna spoil a movie for you. You've had 20 years or so to watch this movie I'm about to tell you. Came out in 1999. The Bone Collector stars Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie. Denzel Washington is a detective that gets injured in an accident while pursuing a suspect. Now he's bedridden, cannot move arms and legs really. All he can move is his fingers to scroll a mouse. He is confined to his apartment, looking at screens with different things that Angelina Jolie has found at the crime scene. His nurse is there, always helping him, and then there's actually a medical assistant that's there to help him. So you may think it's this person or that person as you start to see the clues, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's the medical assistant. It has been spoiled. Catch us next time as we talk about some other 90s stuff, give you another movie to spoil, and some other 90s lingo to share with you. So hope you had fun. Join back in with us. Colton may be here. Who knows who's going to be here. A lot of people are excited about this, so I hope you are too. We'll see you then. Thanks.